Hi, Golden Community, and welcome to episode 3 of the Unfiltered Series here on our podcast, the Mastering Manifestation Together podcast, on all the platforms when it comes to podcast listening. So, welcome if you're listening this on the podcast, and welcome if you're seeing this on the YouTube channel. Hi, as always, subscribe, like, share, rate, all the things, because it helps us to connect to each other. It helps us to basically this information to go to more people like ourselves that want to master manifestation. They want to manifest their dream lives according to their heart. They want to manifest by honoring their bodies, their mind, their souls, and living in their true expression. So thank you in advance for doing that. Thank you in advance for listening to this and watching this. And let's dive in, because today I want to talk to you about what was the fear, the big fear, core wound, I would even call it, that was in the way of me following my soul purpose. So if you've watched episode 1, you already know what I'm talking about, especially if you've watched / listened to episode 2. Oh, you know what soul purpose looks like. You know what my soul purpose was. I would love to hear, by the way, any takeaways on, if you want to share with us what is your soul purpose. Go back to the previous episode and share with us, or you can just connect with me on social media. Tag me at Raluca the Golden Coach with any aha moments from watching this / listening to this, or any other episodes. And let's dive in. Okay, so what was my biggest fear from it was basically in the way of me following my soul purpose? And you know what? I would love to tell you it was simple for me to understand my fear. I would love to tell you, like, oh, it was this, poof, done. But obviously that's not true, right? Otherwise I wouldn't have like a whole podcast on how challenging this has been. But I'm just gonna give you the end. I'm gonna go straight to the juicy part, and then I'm gonna walk backwards how I arrived to the juicy part, instead of like increasing the tension and teasing you and telling you the story from the beginning to the end. I'll give you the end first. So if you're one of those people who loves basically checking the end of the book when you get it, well, it's gonna be good for you. It's simple. Fear of being rejected, fear of being misunderstood, and fear of being abandoned. So it took me a lot of work to understand that the reason why I wasn't allowing myself to fulfill my soul purpose and to follow my soul purpose, and basically, as I said, like, if you already know, you know. If not, I'm going to repeat. My soul purpose is to be creative and share my lessons with as many people as possible, to start all these type of platforms on social media, on the internet, so I can share what I have been going through, what has been challenging for me, what are my lessons, and I know this is going to help other people as well. Why wasn't I doing that? Why did it take me so long to fucking start my social media? Actually, why did it take me so long to start my business? And this is a story maybe you do not know, because I haven't shared it that often, but it took me, what was it, 5 years? 5 years? It took me around 5 years to fully accept what I really want to do with my life. And then once I knew I wanted to do something like this, it took me an additional 3 years. An additional 3 years to actually go ahead and start doing something about it. 2.5 years, and then almost 3 years by the time I actually opened the social media, and another 7-8 months until I actually started using properly that social media and actually putting my real content out there, and even offers to sell, to help people. It was a long journey. If you make the math, it was like 8 years in the making. Oh my God, 8 years of my life that I waited to actually follow what I really wanted to do. Isn't that horrible? Doesn't that sound horrible? And look, if you're listening to this, you might resonate with the 8 years. Some of you might have less, and I really hope that this will inspire you to go for it. And some of you might have many, many, many more years than 8. Some of you, maybe you know what you've been wanting to do for the last 20 years of your life, and you haven't allowed yourself. Maybe life somehow got in the way, and you actually haven't fulfilled your soul purpose in decades. And for all of you that are in that situation, I want to say I admire you, I respect you. You are not too late, you are not a failure. You can always start, you can always go ahead and follow your soul purpose. Remembering your soul purpose is whatever it is for you, and it has nothing to do with you having to monetize it or making it into a business or whatever. Your soul purpose is whatever that path that will bring you peace, abundance, and fulfillment. Okay, remembering as a collective, we have a common goal in this human life on this planet. As a collective, we have a common goal to find peace, abundance, and fulfillment. How we do that, that's going to be depending on our soul purpose. So for me, the fear of rejection, abandonment, it was what kept me all this time. And funny enough, until I reached the conclusion a few days ago, it was very clear. I was doing a meditation in the bathtub. I was doing a regression, basically a past life meditation, where I would try to go back in time through my subconscious mind, traveling through the big maze of my subconscious mind to understand where in my soul's lifetime, where have I made a decision? What has happened that has made me fear that I'm going to be rejected, that I'm going to be abandoned, and I'm going to end up alone, and I'll basically die alone. And I realized that, oh, okay, it's not fear of failure. So until I had this clear realization, until I realized, okay, it was this deep, for a long time, if you have asked me what was my biggest fear, maybe even a year ago, I would have probably told you I have a fear of not being good enough. If you'd have asked me a few years ago, I would have said I have the fear of being a failure. And so on and so forth. But you see how, if you imagine right now like a tree with branches and leaves and everything, and you have all the way to down where you end up at the root, with these big roots into the ground. I want you to understand that all of us, we have usually one, maximum two, really deep core root fears. Out of those roots, an entire tree can grow, and it can stem into 1,000,000 branches with 1,000,000 leaves. And each one of these branch could be a more superficial fear. So for example, for a long time, when I come to my social media, I will be scared, like, oh, a fear of people judging me because I don't wear makeup. Like, if you watch me on YouTube right now, hello, there's no makeup on my face. I was really scared people are going to judge me for not being professional. Obviously, if you follow me on social media, even if you saw my podcast is a bit more tidy up, because it's not that hard to mess it up. But pay attention to the fact I don't filter things. I don't edit stuff. I don't have a team right at the moment that edits anything for me. And I chose this way. I wanted to be messy. I wanted to be really human and real online, because for a long time I had a fear of being human and messy and unprofessional and maybe too childish or too girly or too this or too that, whatever. But it was never that, right? So that was like a more superficial fear in my tree. It was one of those big branches. It was one of the many branches I've had. But actually, deep down, it was this fear of me being alone, me being misunderstood, rejected, and then abandoned, right? So those are like basically the whole process. And let me tell you the story, right? Let me tell you the story of how do I know these are my fears? So, disclaimer alert, we're now going to dive into past life things, okay? So I'm just going to share with you two stories that have confirmed for me that this is a big fear of mine. And this fear makes me feel so unsafe, and it's basically ingrained in the cells of my body. It has been passed down. It has been a mark in my soul, and has been manifesting in different lifetimes in my body, and it has been manifesting in different ways in this current lifetime throughout my entire childhood and growing up, and all the things that me following my soul purpose that has everything to do with me being authentic, being myself, speaking my voice, owning my truth, is basically on the opposite of the spectrum. And you have here on one side me speaking my truth, being really embodied in my authentic self-expression, and then it almost feels like on the other side you have the shadow of people not understanding you, people not getting you, people rejecting you, ridiculizing you, and abandoning you. Okay, so let me tell you how I figured out that this was my this was basically what was stopping my soul purpose to be followed. And right now, disclaimer alert, if I would edit my videos, I'll have like a ding, 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 like bells, like alert signs, because I want you to understand I'm giving you right now an exercise that you could do for yourself, where you basically want to like reflect on this. You can journal, you can speak it out loud, you can record, you can meditate, whatever you want to do, whatever comes easier. And you want to ask yourself a few questions. First, you want to explore what you really want to do. And I was kind of already giving you this in the previous episode. If you haven't listened/watched the previous episode where I was sharing with you, how do you know if it's your soul purpose? I already told you back then, I will say it again. Ask yourself questions around this. Example, if I could have everything, what would I have? If I could be everything, what would my dream life look like? If I could do anything, what would I do, right? What is my soul yearning for? What do I feel absolutely in love with? What would make me feel so happy? And you can explore, right? And you can go deeper, like, okay, who would I be with? And how would my life look like? Where would I live? You can go as many details as you want. And then you want to ask yourself, okay, in that situation, if that happens, what's the worst thing that can happen if I reach that level of dream life? Usually, when you ask that question, it's going to be like, I lose it. Like most humans, when you give them their dreams and you ask them, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen to you right now? It's going to be like, oh, I'll lose it. Yeah, makes sense. And then you want to go deeper. If you do lose it, what would that mean about you? What's the worst thing that could happen if you lose it? Take it as deep and as painful as you get. You want to be like, why is this so hard? Why does this matter so much? Why does this matter? What does this mean about you if that happens? And I promise you, you're going to end up with some type of fear of, it might be fear of dying. It's very common, you know, it might sound a bit extreme, but a lot of us have a fear of dying. It can be fear of abandonment, which is very common, which is what I have. It can be fear of being inadequate, you know, not being enough. Several stuff. It will depend on you, but the core fears and the most common fear for most of us is something around dying, being alone, ending up in a hopeless, devastating situation. Okay, remembering that we are humans and we have this instinct of survival, so anything that will threaten our survival will be our biggest fear. Okay, all right, so I was doing exercise another time. I was basically I've been doing this type of exercise for many times now, so if you've already done it, don't dismiss it, always go ahead and do it again. You never know. I was doing it last week when I was in the bathtub. I was journaling on these questions. I was talking to my psychic mentor at the moment, and she was like, yeah, go ahead and like journal all these things. She's teaching a similar method herself. So I was journaling and I realized, oh, my biggest fear, because usually when I would journal, it would usually end up around fear of not being good enough. And sometimes I would link it to fear of being judged. And because I'm not good enough, that would mean consequently that I would be judged, I would be misunderstood, rejected, and abandoned. But I didn't always end up to this conclusion. That's the reality. So this time I did. It was very clear to me. It was very clear to me as I was thinking about my beautiful dream life, and I was thinking about how I have this life that I'm sharing with my partner in the south of France and in Spain, and I have this beautiful community of people, and I host retreats at my house, and I invite my grandparents over, and I fly them first class, and I travel with my parents all over the world. It was very clear to me that the biggest fear was that the same people, my loved ones, would, if I started really sharing my truth, they would basically stand up, look at me like I'm a freaking stranger. They would not understand me. They would not accept me and what I say, and they would reject me, and they would stop being in my life. They would abandon me. And that will hit really hard. So I realized that, and then I did a regression meditation. If you've ever done any regression in methods like Silva method or any other meditations, then you know. If you've ever done time exercises, then you know as well how to travel in time. And if you haven't experienced any of those things, then I highly encourage you to get yourself a mentor to do those things with, because they're pretty fucking cool. And obviously I'm certified and trained all those methods, and I do them with my clients in my programs. So, you know, we can just go ahead, jump in my DMs. We can talk about how I can help you with any of these things. So I was doing a regression, and I was traveling through my timeline, trying to go to the core root, where did this belief of, oh my God, if I speak my soul, if I'm authentic, people, my loved ones, and people in general will not understand, they will reject me, and they will abandon me. Where is it coming from? And I traveled all the way, I think it was 3 or 4 lifetimes ago, and this interesting imagery came through, and it took me quite some time to get the full grasp of it. It was probably one of the hardest regressions I've ever done. Usually I get a lot of information very fast, but let me share more details. The image was really interesting. It was, I could see myself. I knew it was me, but I wasn't looking at myself. I was wearing this old gown, and I would love to tell you what century it would be from, but I'm not very good with fashion when it comes to century. But, you know, if you want to think about any series or movies that are based more in medieval times, with those corsets, and I'm talking like a commoner dress, right? It wasn't like a princess or royalty. It was a commoner dress, bit of corset, nothing fancy. It was I think it almost had like an apron on top, and I could see that it was this woman, it was me, and she was desperately crying, and she was in pure desperation. She was in huge pain, as she was standing in front of a pile of wood and a stake, where a loved one, a man, was being burned alive. So I could feel the pain. I could see that she was, and there was people around watching this ritual of being burned alive. The man was obviously not doing very well, that he was being burned, and me, I could see myself throwing myself at the fire, and I was crying, and I was thinking how it's all my fault, how I'm guilty, how I shouldn't have done this, and it's all my fault because he's being punished for me. And there were people around us, and nobody was doing anything. I was just like watching and witnessing, and I was screaming at them, and I was feeling so much pain, and I was asking him for forgiveness, and I just know that he was looking at me in forgiving eyes, and that was a very, very interesting thing. So I had to go through that experience, and I had to, like, you know, jump in the memory as myself as today, to speak to this version of me, to release her pain. And as I would speak to her, and as I witnessed the whole process, the lesson after all was that I don't know what has happened. I don't know what she did, but because of something I did, because I own my power in some way. I don't know if I was practicing witchcraft or if I stood for certain principles, but I did something out of the norm, that it was for the good intention. I think I was helping people, if I remember right, but I was out of the norm. I went against society rules. It was not a typical thing accepted at that time. And for some reason, it was my partner that it wasn't me that was burned alive, it was him, which is quite weird because with most of my clients that work for these kind of things, I have a lot of clients that come from like lines of witches, and a lot of them have been burned alive or drowned or exiled like themselves. So it's very weird that in my memory it wasn't me on the stake, but I was around it. From the memory, I could witness myself. I actually threw myself on the fire, so I died also in that moment, in that time, in that lifetime, in that moment. Even though it was my partner, maybe it was a husband, maybe it was just a partner, that he was being burned alive, I threw myself on the fire and I myself burned alive as well. So obviously that was a bit intense to experience as a past life memory, but just being there, witnessing my own pain and my past lives version pain, and just sitting with her and, you know, trying to understand what's happening, it just came very clearly forward that she had this belief like, oh my God, I screwed up. I owned my my truth, and my people did not understand it, and now I'm all alone because, you know, I was being punished for it. So yeah, I don't remember more detail than this. I do remember that she was being very upset with the crowd. So there might have been some loved ones in the crowd. She might have been abandoned by her family. That's something that feels very true when I speak about it right now. When I feel into it, it feels like there was, my intuition is telling me right now, and my spirit guides are telling me right now as I'm speaking, that I don't think that was her actually legit husband. I think that was a partner, and they were not married. And I think that was a problem as well for the times and for society. And her family turned against her as well. It feels very true to me. And as I'm reliving the memory right now and I'm talking about it for this recording, I'm channeling more information around it, which is so interesting. So interesting. So yeah, that was one of the moments in my lifetime, in my soul's lifetime, that I made this belief like, oh, if I'm being true and honest, and I follow my heart, this will happen. Shit will happen. The second situation I had that I realized is a similar, not similar, another situation where I basically realized that this was my core fear, is actually an older event. So this specific event I just mentioned about the being burned alive and all those things, I have tapped into this memory just last week. But this second memory I want to share with you is something I tapped into last April when I was journaling and I was trying to understand where I had a vow struggle in my life, and I was trying to understand, where have I picked it up? When have I decided my life has to be hard, it has to be wrong, and it has to be always difficult and hustling and struggling? So I did all this meditation, and I was basically channeling, and I was speaking to myself, and I was journaling as I was channeling to get all the information out. And I traveled through different of my generational line, and I understood a lot of things. And I will talk about my generational line in another video because that's also very, very, very interesting. But in that specific moment, I also got another memory from a past life, which was my previous past life. So it was somewhere in the 20s, 20s, 30s, something like that. In 1920s, basically. And the image I had there, the memory I had there, and I spoke with that version of myself. I spoke properly with it. It was very, very mind-blowing. It was that it was during the war or after the war, and I can't tell exactly the year. I don't know what year was it exactly, but I was all alone. I died on the streets in poverty, in a ditch, literally. I was a woman, and my family all died. And I don't know how they died, if it was, because they went to war, the men, or I don't know if they were killed. I don't know how, but I just remember speaking to that version of me. It became very clear that I was abandoned. I was again alone and abandoned, and I died very poor and with nothing in a ditch during the war. So that was very, very interesting, a very painful experience. I remember that was a very painful experience for me. I will probably make another podcast episode about past lives and how you can honor them. But I feel called to already share a little bit about this with you. For that one, that version of me actually asked me to bury her. I remember I was asking her, what do you need so you can actually go into the light? What do you need to like transcend and to, become part of the white light and not feel the pain anymore, and to let go of this limiting belief so I can let go of it as your, extension of your soul. And she asked me to bury her. She was like, bury me in flowers. I don't want to be in a ditch anymore. So I was so emotional. I went outside. I did a whole finger ritual. I'll talk about it another time. It was very beautiful. But yeah, that's how I realized. And the whole dots started connecting to me, and they really, really, really clicked to a whole new level of understanding these past few days, that the reason why I wasn't able to start a freaking podcast, the reason why I wasn't able to just come here and talk to the whole world about these very intimate things and to share with you my experiences, was because it wasn't necessarily the surface fears like, oh, they're going to laugh at me and nobody's going to care, or who am I to speak about this stuff and how is this helpful, or even like fear of not being good enough, not good enough, the way I speak, the way I share stories, whatever. But actually, if you trace down all the way to the root, those superficial fears, which by the way are still thoughts that come in my mind, don't get me wrong, I still doubt if I'm doing things right or not, but if you trace it all the way down, it had everything to do with this deeper fear of like, oh, if that happens, if I'm not good enough, then people will judge me, people will misunderstand me, and then they will reject me and fully abandon me, and I will end up dying alone. So it's crazy if you think about it. Excuse me, from a logical point of view, it's like, what? You're not starting a podcast because you're afraid you're going to die in a ditch, Raluca? Yeah. Basically. I know how it sounds, but it doesn't matter how it sounds, because what it sounds like is just our conscious mind. Our conscious mind is tiny. Our conscious mind has not the that doesn't have the power over our lives. If it did, then we would all be millionaires. Not that. It's our subconscious mind, with our body, with our soul. Those are the ones who are really, really, really holding the power, and they are the masters behind the scenes. So that was my fear, and I would love to hear from you in the comments if you know what your deepest fear is, if you have explored it already, if you have done any regression in past lives, if any of these resonates or not. I would love to hear. I promised at one point on the podcast, both on the YouTube channel and on the podcast platforms, I will start giving you more tools. Right now, I'm just honoring my soul, and my soul wants to tell the stories, and I trust the stories are going to initiate you in whatever you have to be initiated in. And if you want to be helped with any of these things, I do this kind of work with my clients. You just have to come on my Instagram page or my Facebook page. Remember, I'm always at Raluca the Golden Coach on all the platforms. Join one of my offers. I have many offers and many price points, and you can have access to this kind of tools so you can figure out your own fears and work for them. Because, oh my God, if you can identify your biggest fear, if you can be aware of where that root core is coming from and which one is it, if you can name it, you have this awareness of yourself that you will never be again the same. Like everything will suddenly make sense in your life. A fog will be lifted from your eyes, and you will see more clearly why you're not doing certain stuff. And then, if you have the tools and the support, which by the way, you can always find within yourself, to shift for this fear, to master it, to make sure it does not drive your life, but it's just there as a passenger. So thank you for tuning into episode 3 of Unfiltered Series. I will continue more with stories of how I struggled the last few months with my darkness of the soul and all the details. If you have any questions, always drop them in the comments. If you like this video, or this audio, please take a screenshot of your device. Go ahead and share it on your Instagram stories and tag me, or on Facebook stories at Raluca the Golden Coach. I would love to reshare you on my page, and obviously I'm going to interact with you in DMs, because if you have any takeaways that you want to share with me, I'm here. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.